Hello, hello. Welcome back to As For You in My House. I'm Elena.
And I'm Jordan.
Today we are going to be shining some light on bringing children into the world, whether it's your first time bringing a child in or this is your fifth child, seventh child. We want to kind of share what we are doing to prepare our home, our children, our life for bringing in this new child. And we're so excited. I think I get more excited every time because I know what's going to happen and I know all the beautiful bliss that comes with it, that I just get more and more excited.
Yeah. I mean, that's for me, just adding another arrow in the quiver, adding another baby at our house. That's special, regardless of, like you said, if it's your first or your 10th, so it's always a joy. And yeah, we're hoping that we can share with you guys some of the ways that we're preparing and how that's going to just enhance our overall family dynamic. I feel like it's already stressful enough for so many people, or the default setting is like stress, right? Oh, there's a baby coming. I got to do this, that, and the other. So we're trying to switch our default setting from stress to bless. And that also rhymes, which I didn't prepare.
And the Lord works things in beautiful ways. And I think normally when you find out you're about to have a baby, you have roughly 8 to 9 months to prepare. And so it's not like you find out and you're going to have this like massive adjustment tomorrow or the next day. You have a whole 9 months to prepare. And so I think it's really beautiful to look at different ways to do that. So a lot of what we will share, I think we want to cater obviously to people who are having kids for the first time. So you can kind of pick and choose from there. But first, we are preparing our children. And I think this is one that is probably become a little bit easier now that they're a little bit older. I would say that this is probably the first birth that we're about to have where I think at least 2 of our kids have a good understanding of what's actually going to happen. Because last time when we did, our kids were 2 and 3 and like freshly 2 and 3. And so I still think they were a little bit young and didn't really understand what was happening. But I think they're old enough now where they do. So we are preparing them in various ways. So
yeah, for me, especially as a dad, I want to make each of our children that are currently born, that sounds so weird, but our current 3 children all feel like my favorite child.
Yeah.
Each individually is my favorite. Well, how am I doing this? Just very simply stated, spending a lot of time with them, as much time as possible. So when I have free time, it's not spent on myself, it's spent on them, at least in this season of life, right? And so as baby's getting closer to arriving, I want them to know, like, okay, right now Alethea loves getting bubble tea. So I'm going to take her out on as many bubble tea dates as possible. Yeah. And it's just spend time, just me and her. And you don't have to overthink it, right? Just the more time, like our friends Elisha and Katie say, from now that we're a family, I can call them our friends now because they're on our show. Yeah. It's official. But they say, like, you have to spend time with your kids to know what they like. And right? You can't just guess at everything. And so it sounds so simple and so straightforward, but really the more time you spend with them and the more you try out things and see what they like, especially at this point when you have a little bit older kids, then you can see, okay, my daughter really likes going on bubble tea dates. My son really likes walking the dogs with me. So even if it's a little more inconvenient or it takes a little bit longer to like put his shoes on and go like let the dogs out 3 or 4 or 5 times a day, he wants to do that with me. And so I'm like, yeah, let's go. And he'll just come out and stand outside with me. It's not like we're going anywhere or it's no heavy lift, right? But it's just the time being together that as I'm putting the leashes on the dogs, he's putting his shoes on and I'm putting his coat on and we're going out and he's with me. It's more so being together than what you're doing together, if that makes sense.
Yes, I totally agree with that. And one thing that I'm trying to do is making it very obvious and like stating what is going to be different. And so like there will be a change in our routine. Like I'm letting them know that I will be in bed for a little bit longer and that we are going to try our best to stick to our rhythms, but babies cry. So you might hear the baby crying and the baby, like, it's just funny because when we look back at like our own home footage that we have of like the questions our kids asked when Evangeline was born, like one of our kids asked like, can we take this baby downstairs? Like it's just so cute to like just see how like they think, or like, I don't know. I remember I asked my mom if we could give Melanie back to the hospital. Like that's how my brain was working. So obviously take this and apply it to the age that your child is at. But I'm just letting them know, like, I'm going to be changing diapers frequently. And then I think it's also important to delegate and remind them of what their jobs are in this position, because I think if you do desire to have a larger family, it is important to set an expectation of like what you expect from your children. And Jordan and I try really hard to let our children know that they are not responsible for their siblings. Yes, they're responsible for house chores and their things and their learning. But one thing we just simply don't want to impose on our children is them feeling responsible for younger siblings.
Like, oh, you're a little parent now.
Yeah, like you're in charge of
siblings.
Taking care of diapers and you're in charge of doing bath line. Like that's not what we're trying to do.
But here's the cool thing. In us not wanting to impose that on our kids, they have willingly wanted to serve or wanted to fulfill those roles on their own. Yeah. So we won't say, oh, Latha, watch your younger siblings, or Ari, watch, like we won't impose that on them, but we will say, hey, would somebody like to help getting the bath ready? And then they'll run up and say, oh yeah, I want to do this. I'll start the water. I'll get the soap. I'll get the toy. Like
there's like a fine line.
They're contributing too. Right. It's not like they're being forced or they're begrudgingly doing it. Like they're wanting to, because they see, wow, this is helpful. This is
they're part of the family unit. They find
they're contributing.
Yes. Yeah. So I think again, I want to vocalize, because I just remember really making that a point when we did have Evangeline of like, you do not have to sit here and change all these diapers with me. If you would like to, you're more than welcome to sit here with me, but I have no expectation for you as a child to do this with me or take on that duty. That is my duty. I chose to bring this child into this world. This is mine and Jordan's job. And then again, I always go back to, you guys have heard me say this, but my job as a mom that I say to my kids is to love and to teach them. And their job is to play and to obey. And so sometimes I'll even ask them, like, do you think what you're doing right now falls into either playing or obeying? No, go have fun. Go build something instead. You know, like you don't need to sit here and try to tend to a newborn. So making that very evident and vocalizing that, because vocalizing is really important. You might think it in your mind, but you need to make sure to vocalize that to your children.
And one little addendum to that point is just to continually remind your children how important of a role they in particular play in the family, because as you start growing and adding more children, it's easy. Like I'm sure you guys have heard of the middle child syndrome, or you might,
I rebuke
unfortunately, maybe even experience that yourself if you're a middle child. And
I hate that so much. My heart just grieves.
Yeah, because you have like the oldest, right? The firstborn, the golden child, and then you have the baby, right? Who can do no wrong. And then you have the middle child that's kind of like, what's my purpose here? Like I'm intentionally acting out or doing something to get attention because I'm not getting it on your own. So that's something Melanie and I have been praying against, and wanting to, as our family grows, that each child knows your role and your identity is, like Mr. Rogers would say, you're valuable just by you being you. You know, like that's their role is there's nothing more that they can do for us to love and accept them, and we want our actions to reflect that as much as possible. So
Amen.
Just reminding them and restating to them that they're vital and that they're irreplaceable, and that it's not them getting pushed aside. It's everyone getting, raised up to another level together. And that number one platform is just growing, So that's kind of something we want to continue reiterating with our kids.
Yeah. And given the changes that happen when you do bring a child into the world, one thing we are trying to keep is our rhythms and habits as a family as streamlined as possible leading up to this birth. And so, for example, we have been trying to figure out, some of our kids are in transitional phases where they're either dropping a nap or dropping fully naps or potty training. And so these are all things that we have tried to think about like, do we want to do this before the baby comes or after the baby comes? If we're going to do it before the baby, we need to make sure we have ample time so that when we're in the thick of the newborn stage, we're not in the thick of that, as well as transitioning from dropping a nap. Or so that's just something to keep in mind. Like, are you about to enter a transitional phase with your other children, and are you able to be proactive whether doing them before or after the baby arrives?
Yeah, that's great.
Anything to add on to that point?
No.
All right. Next one, and this is probably like what will end up consuming the rest of the episode, and that is listing off things that need to be done beforehand and can be done beforehand. What can you control and what can't you control? I think nothing really teaches you about control and surrendering things to the Lord quite like birth, and even not even knowing the time or the hour. Like, I think there's so much biblical like symmetry to birth and even just like the coming of Jesus, and it's just like the Bible uses birth a lot as an example of
how God works.
Yeah. And so I think it's really beautiful. And there's a verse in the Bible that literally says that a woman will be saved through bearing children. And so I think there's such beauty and significance in this season and to really press into the Lord. But for example, we have been decluttering our home and doing things that are in our control to make it a little bit easier when the baby does come here. Like,
yeah, we did and when we say decluttering, we're talking like major, go through every bin and every nook and cranny in our basement and every bin and every nook and cranny in our garage, which just hearing those words, if you're like me, hearing garage or basement uttered, and especially in the same sentence, like that just overwhelms me.
Yeah.
But
we did it.
Yeah. I mean, we took the time. We're like, all right, this is going to be a little bit,
We
hectic.
stayed up until 4 a.m.
Like, we're going to have to white knuckle our way through this,
Yeah.
but it paid off in the end. And we're like, man, we're glad we did this now versus when we have a newborn and like we're really sleep deprived. Maybe not. God help us, if we are, but we're praying that we'll still get some good sleep. And then it's just so much easier now than versus when baby's here. And so we're trying to, I feel like we're basically done. Like, we could check that box and say we decluttered.
Yeah, because when, like, you want to preserve the time after having a baby as such a sacred time. And so life obviously will continue after you have a baby, but how can you continue in life in a way that is just blissful and you're not having to focus your time and energy on other things? And so
especially as like a first time parent, that's so key because it's enough of a shift having a baby, but then it's like similar but not exactly the same example as marriage, right? Everyone focuses on the one day, the wedding day, but then when you actually get to, okay, what does the rest of my life now look like? My life's radically changed now. Same thing with a baby. Okay, yeah, delivery and birth is at least ought to be a 1 day thing. Sometimes it's,
a 3-day thing
drawn out, but then it's like, okay, baby's here. Wow. Like, and I remember feeling the weight of that as a dad, like, oh my gosh, my life is completely changed now. And it hits you at some point as a parent, and you're like, my life's never going to be the same, but it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's the best transition.
And things that once mattered really don't afterwards. And so I've been really preparing myself because I've noticed this as a pattern with each child. Like, there are certain things that were super crucial and important to me with our first child. For example, this is a really easy one. Like, when we had our first daughter, I loved getting her dressed like top to bottom, bow, big, like the whole 9 yards, like vest, cute shoes, like the whole thing. Our third baby was in PJs all day, every day.
It's like there's a reel I saw. It was this guy, and he said he's like cutting up strawberries for my first child, and it's like he's making like little shapes and like taking his time, like quartering it, very sweet. And then he's like cutting up strawberries for my third or fourth child, and he literally just takes the berry, he bites the stem off, he's like, and then he like spits it out. spits it out and throws it on the plate and like, like
Okay,
shoves it
not
under,
like that.
like shoves it under the
But
door.
to-
Like,
To an extent, like, yes, there are certain things that you realize you were like wasting a lot of time doing that is
Yeah.
just not valuable, not just vanity, and not really adding much anything to life.
Yeah.
And then I think it really helps boil down truly what matters. And so I love experiencing that reality of like, this is no longer important because it's so sobering and I love it. So I can't wait to see what we end up dropping.
Friends, we hope you're enjoying this episode. We're going to finish up in just a minute, but we want to thank Hillsdale College for sponsoring this episode. And you've heard Milena and I talk about how precious time is, that you can always make more money, you can always make more things, but you can't make more time. So we've been trying to use our time and steward it better and more intentional, especially when it comes to our education and our learning. We're super excited that Hillsdale College is offering over 40 free courses online in all kinds of highly valuable and beneficial and interesting subjects. For example, they have a whole course on the works of C.S. Lewis. They have an in-depth look at the book of Genesis and the meaning of the Constitution. The rise and fall of the Roman Republic, which right now it's, I guess, trending that guys think about the Roman Republic, so might as well take a course and get educated on it. And one that I'm most excited about is the history of the ancient church and Christianity. And one that I'm most excited about is the history of the ancient Christian church. And once again, these are all available for free. That's right, entirely free. For example, in the Ancient Christianity 11 lecture course, you can learn about the stories of Christ, his apostles, and the faithful ones throughout the first 4 centuries of Christianity. You also learn the arguments of key Christian apologists who defended the Christian faith in the face of persecution. This course is self-paced, so you can start it whenever you want, do it at your leisure. If you've got a busy schedule or you want to do stuff maybe mornings or evenings or at work, at lunch break or whatever, you can make it flexible, make it work for you. So go right now to hillsdale.edu/myhouse to enroll. There's no cost and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/myhouse to register. hillsdale.edu/myhouse. But that's super important, and something I failed at royally was not saying no to almost everything. Especially within the first few weeks. I don't know. I don't want to put an exact time limit because everyone's different. Every situation's different, but there has to be an initial no period in your life when you have a newborn, whether it's your first or your 8th, and you're just saying no to everything outside of being with baby, with your wife. This is sacred time that you have to be together as much as possible. Even if you're doing nothing, the point isn't to be doing stuff. The point is to just be, right? And so it helps set the tone for the new adjustment in the weeks and months ahead as you start to reintroduce those extracurriculars and those more activities on top of it. But yeah, that's something. Do what I say, not what I do in that regard, because I would just, let's go. Or like, let's go do this. And it's like,
And I was literally falling
the
asleep
umbilical
in the
cord is still connected. And I'm like, okay, honey, see you later. Like, you got that pushed out? All right, I'll be back in a few days. I'm going on a camping trip or something like that.
Well, I
didn't
think
do that, by the way. I'm just saying it was
is
something stupid like that.
It is just, I empathize with that because you didn't just like physically, because for you, like you saw me physically go through something, but now that the physical is done, in your mind, it's like, oh, the baby's already here, so we're good.
Yeah.
But like you're still in a lot of pain. And I just remember, especially with the home birth, because I wasn't on medication, like I was in the hospital, like I was just really achy and painy. And like even walking down the stairs was really hard. And so like, yes, the baby's here, like the quote unquote hard part was done of like the actual labor. I still felt the effects of labor like several weeks later. So that was just one of the things that I wanted to say is like, sit down, you and your spouse, and literally write out what is going to be a priority of the season and what is not going to be a priority. So for example,
and then put a time limit on that, especially for wives, do this for your husband, because he could feel trapped if you're just like, all right, it's going to get everything's changing and we're not seeing anyone. We're not going anywhere. Everything's door dashed. Like as a guy, you might be like, especially if you're like wanting to hang out with the guys or see your family or like you're involved in a sport or so. I don't know. Like, but I'm just saying like there might be other things where you're like, okay, now I feel trapped because my wife said I can't do anything. outside of
That's why I
work
think
or
it's
being
important.
right by her side with the baby all day. And it's like, well, put a time limit on this and then say, all right, in 10 days, we're going to commit to this for 10 days while I'm freshly postpartum. Then let's revisit after 10 days.
Yeah.
We'll set a note in our phones or we'll put it on the calendar and like, this time in 2 weeks or whatever, let's come back and say, hey, how are we feeling? Let's check in. And then if you're like, yeah, I feel like we're in a good rhythm, then renegotiate how you're going to reintroduce some of these things.
That's wise. Yeah. And like, so this time around, I'm trying the 5-5-5 rule. And, Jordan kind of laughed at me when I said that because
I didn't laugh. I just was
He
like
just-
in disbelief.
We'll
I don't buy that anyone is doing that.
Okay, so it's basically 5 days in the bed, 5 days on the bed, 5 days around the
Do
bed.
you want me to like hook up a catheter for you or
So that was the thing. Jordan was like, what? So we will see because postpartum with the other kids, I never sat in bed for more than a day. But my goal is to just be more intentional about not doing
Resting.
things around the house.
Yeah, intentional rest.
Yeah, like, okay, so again, another thing, what is important and what's not. So I remember last time when we did have our third baby, laundry was something that was hard for us to keep up with. So during that season, and this is something again that I think is really wise, once you find out you are pregnant, start stashing away money every single month for something that you can do to better serve and help your family postpartum. So it doesn't have to be like thousands of dollars. It could literally be $20 one month, $50 another month. But for those 9 months, start budgeting and accommodating for these things so that you feel less of a burden when you are postpartum. So one of the things that we wanted to invest in was a laundry service. So when I had Evangeline, we had a laundry service that came, once a week for the first like 2 or 3 months. And they didn't do all of our laundry because that was really expensive. I still continued to do, I think we just sent our laundry and towels. And then I did the kids' clothes. Yeah. So again, it was just a new season. And that was one thing that really helped alleviate the stress of worrying about laundry.
Yes.
This time around, I feel like I'm in a really good rhythm with our laundry. That's not going to be a priority. This time around, I would love to hire help with cleaning the home. And so we're trying to figure out, okay, who do we want to come in? How frequently do we want them to come in? How long after postpartum? So I think it's just wise to see what is a priority to you. Maybe laundry isn't a priority, but maybe seeing like dirty floors and crumbs everywhere is something. So maybe
or meal training too is another big one. Like, or you get a like a food delivery service
or freezer meals. So like I've not done freezer meals in the past because we've always had the meal train, which we're so thankful for. Those are so helpful, but I really want to focus on my recovery this time and just really eat high protein, high fat, and just focus on healing and nourishing my body really well. So I am making like soups and freezing them, and I'm going to do crock pot meals and certain things. Again, you have 9 months to prepare. Obviously the food you don't want to prepare like when you're 2 months pregnant, because then it's just
Milena's out here like,
there.
look, the test, it's positive. And she's like, in the next scene, it cuts to her like cooking in a giant like Italian grandma
whole pot.
vat of like,
Well, I
gotta portion this out for the first 4 years postpartum.
Yeah. So like you have to, there's certain things that you can obviously do a little bit closer and prepare. One thing I've seen people do that I think is beautiful is instead of throwing a baby shower, do a where everyone comes over and they help you nest. So instead of throwing a big shower and spending a lot of money and doing all these things, the women actually come over. Some of them help you prep meals. Some of them help set up the nursery. Some of them help set up your diaper bag and your changing station. Like clean your house, help declutter, like spend a whole day. Like, can you imagine how beautiful it'd be to have like 10 women come over who are just like eager and excited to help you welcome a baby? I think that's beautiful. So again, just communicate with the community that you have any needs and desires. Because if one of my girlfriends came over and told me like, I want you to help me organize, I'm like, just tell me when and where to be, because I know how helpful that is. And so communicate that, write things down, just be proactive about expressing these things, and then be willing to change after things happen too.
And if you're a husband too, one of the things that was super helpful is having like the guys over and each guy has brings a
Oh,
diaper, like a
yeah.
pack of diapers, and you're not getting like all newborn stuff, but you might
Yeah.
get like have a couple guys. Hey, can you bring newborn? Hey, can you bring level ones? Can you bring level three? And like you can have
Yeah.
15, 20 friends over, guys, and you have enough diapers for the first year of life, and it's because everyone's buying one. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
So that's another way that you can, as a guy, nest, if that makes sense, or help your wife nest, I should say.
Yeah. And then also do frequent check-ins once the baby does come. So I remember Jordan would frequently check in with me, like, how are you feeling? How are you doing? How can I best help? What isn't helpful? Like, because your hormones are also all over the place. So you might think that having laundry done is like super important to you, but then you're like, I just don't care about that at all. I actually just want you to sit with me and just like hold me. Like just be open to communicating the needs and desires as they come and be willing to fluctuate and move. Last thing that I wanted to share was just thinking about your other children. What are some ways that you can be intentional about the time that you spend with them? What are there certain things that you're going to need help with, like pick up and drop off for school? Or are there certain tasks that you like physically cannot do postpartum, and who can you help or have facilitate that? Ask your husband how much time he had off. Like I remember when we had our first couple of children, like he had no time off and was back to work like the next day. So I think, and we never really planned that or like thought what to best do about that. It was just kind of like, oh, he's gone. All right, I guess I'll handle 2 kids. So
I mean, obviously,
talk
if you have
about that
family
and-
nearby or like church friends, I think a lot of people are either there's 2 reasons why people don't reach out. Is one is they don't have a community. In that case, use the 8-9 month time ahead to like find groups that you can get plugged into or connected, other expecting moms, a community, start at your church. Be able to find that little community, that little tribe of
one thing you
people.
don't want to do is motherhood alone.
Yeah, and it really does take a village. That village might just be you and your husband, but by all means possible, try to extend that village out, because we're not meant to do life alone. Kids are a team effort, and usually that team goes beyond you and your spouse. As much as possible, like that's a good thing, right? Obviously, everyone's cases is different, so I'm trying to be understanding of that. So, but if you have family, if you have mentors, if you have extended family or good close friends, people like that you can trust and rely on and lean on, and say, hey, maybe like your kids can come over here one day a week, and then my kids can go over there one day a week, and you're kind of trading back and forth, or I can pick up one day, you can pick up the other, or pick up and drop off, whatever,
So I did that postpartum because I had a friend, we were due within like a couple of weeks of each other. And so like right before she gave birth, she was dropping her kids off. And then I remember right after I gave birth, she was coming over with her kids and just watching my kids. Yeah. So like there's like, it's beautiful to see what you can do and how mothers can come together in seasons like that.
Last thing I'll say is, guys, don't be afraid to step up. I was a little bit more passive, especially with the first 1 or 2, where I'm like, okay, Milana seems like she's done her homework and done her research a lot more than I have, so I'm just going to kind of follow her lead on this whole like parenting journey. But it's, as our friend Jeremy Pryor would say, it's not parenting, it's mothering and fathering. There's a role for you as a father to fulfill. There's a role just like for your wife to fulfill as a mother, and they're not interchangeable and expendable. So you do have a role as a father to play, and that is shouldn't be overlooked. And so don't be afraid to like roll up your sleeves and get in there and be proactive and take initiative. And okay, I'm going to take the kids out, I'm going to take them here, I'm going to do this, I'm going to take care of, like, don't wait for somebody to tell you, or don't wait for your wife to tell you this needs to get done. Be proactive about doing it, and just, hey, just so you know, I took care of this, or hey, just so you know, I scheduled that and we're good. Hey, you don't have to worry about this, so that's I think going to go a long way too. Especially if it's your first, that you're like, okay, you're adjusting too, right? Just as your wife is. So don't be afraid in part of that adjustment process to take initiative and step out and really be like gung ho about it. It's like, it's your new role as a dad. So embrace it, embrace it fully.
Yeah, and take advantage of the skin to skin time too, because I think we always like press so hard of like the mom doing skin to skin and the mom holding the baby, and like yes, but that baby is also half of you. And so
Yeah.
I know that I specifically want to be more proactive of like having you bond with the baby.
Yeah.
Because I think it just comes naturally to you, especially like to me, especially if I'm breastfeeding and like the baby is just on me, obviously.
Right.
But
I don't know where the whole mentality of, because you're a dad, you can't be affectionate with your children. Like I remember my uncle, who I really respect. I respect all my uncles, but one that he's very he has a healthy perspective on his feelings, I guess you can say. I'm not. It sounds weird to say like he's in tune with his feelings, you know.
Yeah.
But he has like a healthy introspection on like feelings and processing that. And he says he remembers when he had a daughter first, and then he had twin boy and girl, and he said he remembers like when his first child was born, as his first daughter. He was like, "Oh, this is like daddy's girl, mushy, cushy, like kissing and hugging and all that stuff." And then when he had a son, he remembers like pausing for a second, thinking, "Wait, am I supposed to like kiss and embrace and be lovey-dovey with my son too?" And he's like, "Of course, it's my child, you know." So if you're a dad, like don't be afraid to kiss your son. Don't be afraid to like cuddle and have that one-on-one time, because I guarantee you, I'm cuddling hard with my son, but I'm also like wrestling hard with him too. Like
Yeah.
you should be balanced in that, and it's not a sign of weakness to be affectionate with your children. It's actually a sign of insecurity if you're not doing those things. And so, yeah, fight and wrestle and throw your kid through the walls and repair the drywall, but also like kiss them and be affectionate and cuddle, right? Like that's I love doing that with our kids.
Yeah.
You know, so
How do you feel like it's easy for you to bond with a baby? Would you say it is skin to skin?
yeah, again, just being there. Like this was something we talked about in one of my men's group that really values fatherhood, and that people say, well, you know, the baby's
it
not
is
going to remember.
hard.
Well, that's one of the things is they'll always say like, don't worry if you're not, you know, as involved, because the baby's not going to remember.
But you remember.
And that's the key. You it's not so much for the baby as it is for you as a
Right.
father. Is like, I'm having this time, and part of the reason why I think God has made babies so dependent at the earliest stages of their life is so that you can spend just time with them. You're not doing anything. You're
Right.
just being there with them. You could be sitting in a chair for 2 hours and you're just holding them, and you're experiencing time spent with them.
I am so excited. I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's gonna be great.
Like those like snuggles like with newborns where they just like sit there and they're just like literally this big, and they just like like whatever position you put them in, they're just like,
And then they'll just sigh every once in a while. You're like,
oh,
and you're just like, okay, good, they're breathing.
like the little noise. I love the newborn stage is just chef's kiss.
Yeah, it's
All
too
right,
quick.
y'all. Let us know how you have prepared in the past to bringing children. If you have multiples, how that has changed, if it's become easier, if it's become harder. Let us know some details down below.
Yeah, give us your tips, because we want to read them and get in the comments. We want to see
And there's probably so
how
much
we can help ourselves be prepared.
I
more
know
too.
there's probably a lot
How
we
you
missed
can help
too.
us, I should say.
All right, guys. See you next week. Bye.